Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. So I recently saw this tweet by Liberal MP Catherine McKenna, basically saying that to help tackle climate change and grow a clean economy, our government will plant 2 billion trees, provide grants for home retrofits, and build zero-emission vehicles and charging stations. So this right here really encapsulates a big problem I have with the Liberal Party of Canada, which is that it's basically a whole bunch of nothing meaningful or substantial. This is the supposedly, we care about science and climate change party of the two sort of main parties that seem to get elected in Canada. This is that pro in support of, green policies, and we support the science of climate change. This party is saying that this is what they're going to do, which in terms of what needs to be done in the timescale remaining amounts to next to nothing. If the Liberal Party of Canada were serious about addressing climate change as they claim to be, they would do things like ending all the fossil fuel subsidies, like effective immediately. They would refuse to fund roads and the expansion of roads in cities and suburbs, and instead focus on intensification efforts to both prevent excessive greenhouse gas emissions and also to cut down on the cost of providing services by keeping more people tighter together. They would also agree that in exchange for less road funding and whatnot, they would fund a greater share of public transportation projects, be it for green buses, fleet electrification, high-speed rail, new rail lines or streetcar lines, or whatever it may be. They would also, if they were serious about this, do what Quebec and other nations like India and China are planning on doing, which is banning the sale of all gasoline cars by 2035. They would also, if they were truly serious about climate change as a threat, they would develop a comprehensive retraining program for oil sector workers across Canada. They would say, look, sorry about your industry. It's just not really viable or in vogue anymore, but don't worry, we're going to cover your expenses and we're going to retrain you for whatever other sectors work. So geothermal could work really well in Alberta, for instance. We have an opportunity to instead retrain you for solar, electric, robotics, IT. They would do something along those lines if they were in any way serious. And on top of it all, if they were truly serious about climate change, they would pass a version of a Green New Deal. They would help foster hemp production. They would help participate in a planned economy, kind of like they did in World War II, which led to the explosive growth of the Canadian economy, unlike anything seen prior, both because of the war and because of just having a well-managed and well-planned economy. I've mentioned it before, but Waffle to the Left has a really good video on the subject. I'll link it again down below. And if they were really serious about addressing climate change, they would care a lot more about the continued exploitation and pollution that continues throughout Canada, especially in Indigenous communities and unceded Indigenous land. But this party doesn't actually care. The Liberal Party cares about optics. They always have. Wow, look, gender-balanced cabinet. Never mind that it's still full of a bunch of neoliberal shills and people who are unqualified for their job, be they men or women. They talk about, oh, look, we're a government that's serious about science, and yet they will listen to the science and then either bury it just as the Conservatives did, or they will happily ignore it because they don't want to do the actual hard work. And that's what this ultimately comes down to, which is why I am so tired of liberals doing the bare goddamn minimum and expecting to be celebrated and praised for it. This is like asking for praise because you recycle. That is the bare fucking minimum. Wow, you planted some trees, and they're planning on planting 2 billion trees, but they haven't gotten a start on it, and they probably won't, because it's not something your average Canadian is going to see. But so long as your average Canadian hears about it, then that is fine, because that is going to be enough for a lot of people when it comes to voting again in a voting booth, saying, well, you know, the Liberals, there's that gender balance cabinet, they legalized marijuana, and they said they would, you know, plant a bunch of trees, and they gave me this homeowner's credit, and I've heard murmurings of pharmacare and healthcare and dental care and childcare, and even though they haven't offered any concrete policies on this, you know, I keep hearing them talk about it, which means it's on their mind. So surely at some point in the future it will happen. That is the general view of a lot of people going into a voting booth. It is about the platitudes that they hear. It is about the core beliefs or values that they think a party upholds. And this applies to liberals and conservatives. Liberals will always make it so that it's about the warm, fuzzy, good stuff, right? About social justice and climate change and childcare and healthcare and fairness and equality, when they will never take any meaningful action to address those things and improve those things. And it's the same for conservatives. Conservatives will give you, for their targeted base, what resonates with them, the same fuzzy feel-good stories about self-worth and you can make it if you really try. Pull up by your bootstraps. We're going to make it easier for small business and you will have tax cuts and everything will be better, just like in the good old days when things just made more sense and were simpler, right? And then what do? They expand government. They balloon the debt. They do nothing to meaningfully help your average working Joe Canadian. Or your average working Joe American, Australian, German, Dutch, Polish, Danish, etc. This is the scam that continues to operate throughout the Western world, if not the entire world. And I am so fucking tired of it, because time after time, I see people on both sides of the spectrum think that the party that they support, one of the two main parties, Team Red or Team Blue, they seem to still think after all this time that these parties, which have slowly worn down upon them and slowly pressed their boot on their neck, they think that these parties, whichever one gets elected that they support, is somehow going to make life easier and better, when they never have, except in times of extreme crisis. The problem is right now we are in the midst of an extreme crisis that we can't see, and this is difficult for the limited human mind to understand. When it came to war, depression, rampant poverty, and lack of access to housing, drought, flood, these are things people could see and immediately resonate with and see with their own two eyes and experience and breathe and taste and touch. Now we are at war, or we should be at war, with a virus and with climate change. And yet no one is taking the appropriate measures. And that is largely because of capitalists infiltrating all levels of government and media, and therefore controlling the medium and the message. But it also has to do with an utter lack of an utter lack of bravery, resulting in total cowardice. Because why jeopardize your power and keeping your section of the neoliberal elites happy and supporting you? Why jeopardize that for the genuine benefit of mankind, when you could continue to pretend that things are fine and rely on predictable voting patterns? Oh no, red team got kicked out. It's blue team's turn. Well, give it 4 to 8 or 10 or so years and then it'll be red team's turn again. And we wonder why shit gets worse when we don't vote for different parties or participate in direct action and mass movements like a general strike, which is sorely needed at this point in time. And so, yes, all of this came from this one tweet from an MP in Canada talking as if, this was the greatest thing that any government has ever done in the name of climate change when it amounts to less than nothing. It is high time to stop voting for either of the two main parties who have never made a single thing better for your average working stiff in the past 40 or so years. Right? Am I wrong? Conservatives watching this who yearn for a time, back in the 80s, my Gen Xers out there, that was, peak time to be alive. Have things gotten better or worse since then? How many conservative governments have we had since then? Whether you're Canadian, American, British, Australian. If you're a left-winger or, just left of center, you happily support the Liberal Party, you're a centrist, something like that. Tell me, is life easier, better, and you feel like the social situation has genuinely improved since the 90s? Have things gotten better since Chrétien or worse? Have things gotten better since Clinton or worse? This is something that more people need to be asking themselves. And I'm really, really done with so many people not even bothering to do so. Because this is your life, your planet. This is your society, your culture, your families, your friends. This is the breadth of humanity that sits on a goddamn precipice. We are beyond the looking glass, incremental measures. Stuff needs to start happening now. And the fact that a lot of people aren't recognizing this and are still going to vote for the same two parties that take a wait and see approach is absolutely, monumentally, beyond all reason of a doubt, what is completely, utterly bothering me today.